The real reason a married man can't walk away from you. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why a married man can't forget you even though he knows he should? Why does he come back, insists, look for you, even when everything indicates that he should just continue his life with his wife? The answer lies not in the strength of his relationship, nor in the moral weakness that many point out. It lies in something much deeper and more disturbing, a hidden part of the male psyche that Carl Jung called the unhealed wound of the soul. In this video, you'll discover the real psychological reason why a married man gets stuck with you in a way he himself doesn't understand. It's not love. It is not desire. It's something that messes with the most primitive layers of his mind, a void that only you seem to fill. And when you understand this mechanism, everything will make sense. The inexplicable returns, the messages in the middle of the night, the disproportionate intensity of this connection. Get ready, because what you will discover completely changes the way you see these situations. 1. The projection of the anima, when you become the mirror of his soul. There is a fundamental concept in depth psychology that explains why certain encounters mark us so intensely: projection. When a married man can't get away from you, he's living something that goes far beyond superficial physical or chemical attraction. He is projecting on you an inner image that he has always carried, but that he never had the courage to recognize or integrate into his conscious life. Within the male mind, there is an archetypal female figure, a kind of ideal woman who represents everything that he has not developed in himself: sensitivity, intuition, spontaneity, emotional depth. This figure remains dormant until someone in the external world awakens this image. And when that happens, the intensity is overwhelming because it's not you he's seeing, but rather the embodiment of everything your soul has always sought. Marriage is often built on practical, social, and family foundations. The wife represents security, stability, the expected social role. But you unintentionally woke up something different in him. You have become the bearer of characteristics that he unconsciously desires, but that he has repressed over the years to fit the expectations of society and family. Maybe it's your emotional freedom, your way of seeing the world, your authenticity without masks. He can't rationally explain why you have this power over him. He tries to justify it with words like connection, chemistry, destiny. But the psychological truth is that you have become the mirror where it finally sees reflected all that its own soul cries out to integrate. It's not about who you really are as a complete, complex person. It's about what you represent to his inner world, to the unlived parts of his personality. And here's the crucial point: as long as he doesn't recognize that he's dealing with a projection, he'll remain in prison. Because what he seeks in you, in fact, is within himself. You have become the vessel of your own unfulfilled desires, of your need for completeness, of your search for meaning, and that explains why the call seems so magnetic and inexplicable, almost as if it were something bigger than his will. 2. The emotional void that the wife does not fill. Every long-term relationship goes through inevitable transformations. What starts with passion and discovery gradually settles into routine, shared responsibilities, and well-defined roles. Over time, many marriages become functional partnerships where the deep emotional connection is diluted. Conversations are superficial, limited to practical day-to-day issues, bills, children, commitments, domestic problems. In this process, something fundamental is lost: the ability to be truly seen and understood in its essence. The wife knows her husband in his social roles as provider, father, partner, but he often fails to see him as the man he really is behind those masks. And he also stops showing himself, guarding his vulnerabilities, his fears, his deepest doubts. The marriage becomes a staging of stability where both represent socially approved characters. When you show up, you represent something completely different. There is no shared history. There are no joint accounts. There is no pressure to keep up appearances. He can be who he really is, or at least who he believes he is, when he is not fulfilling obligations. You offer a space where he feels emotionally nourished in a way he hasn't experienced in years, not because you are superior or better, but because the context allows for a connection that his marriage no longer supports. This emotional emptiness is real and painful. Many married men live in silence, a deep loneliness, surrounded by family but feeling completely disconnected. They cannot name what is missing. They just feel that something essential is missing. And when they find someone who seems to fill that void, even temporarily, the feeling is of finally breathing after years of being submerged. The problem is that he's looking outside for what he should build within his own marriage. But that would require vulnerability, the courage to confront one's wife about emotional distance, and a willingness to rebuild intimacy. It is easier, psychologically speaking, to seek in you what he does not have the strength to claim at home. You become the temporary solution to a structural problem that he doesn't really want to face. If this resonates, remember what Jung taught. The unconscious stays where it feels a pull it can't escape. Click the link pinned in the first comment and understand why a married man can't walk away from you. 3. The repressed shadow and the fascination with the forbidden. From a young age, we are taught to repress certain aspects of our personality in order to become socially accepted. Everything that is considered inadequate, improper, or inconvenient is pushed into the depths of the mind, forming what psychology calls a shadow. This shadow does not disappear, it just remains hidden, gaining strength in the unconscious and manifesting itself in unexpected ways. For the married man, there are a number of desires and impulses that have been repressed in the name of respectability. The need for adventure, the willingness to take risks, the attraction to the unknown, the thirst for emotional intensity. Marriage, especially when it is prolonged in routine, represents the opposite of this: predictability, security, restraint. He built a whole life based on control, responsibility, expected behavior. When you appear, you represent everything he had to abandon to become the serious and committed man that everyone expects. You embody the wild, untamed part of your psyche. The forbidden carries an immense energetic charge precisely because it has been denied for so long. It's not about you being prettier, smarter, or more interesting than your wife. It's about you representing the transgression, the breaking of the rules that he imposed on himself. This fascination has deep roots in the unconscious. The shadow cries out for expression, and you have become the conduit through which these repressed contents finally find their way out. Every secret meeting, every hidden message, every stolen moment feeds that part of him that has been silenced. It is a distorted way of trying to integrate what has been denied, but without assuming the real consequences of this integration. The danger here is that this kind of shadow-based attraction never holds up in everyday reality. It is fed precisely by what is secret, forbidden, impossible. If he left his wife and assumed the relationship with you publicly, all this energetic charge would dissipate. You would stop being the personification of the shadow and become just another real person with flaws and limitations. That's why he doesn't choose and can't move away. He needs you to stay in this place of forbidden fantasy so that the shadow continues to be projected. 4. You as a symbol of freedom and authenticity. Adulthood, especially when it involves marriage and family responsibilities, brings with it a series of invisible moorings. These are choices made years ago that completely shape the present. Where to live, how to spend money, who to live with, what image to keep. Many men reach middle age and realize that they are living a life that they never consciously chose. They have only been carried away by expectations and duties. This feeling of imprisonment is suffocating, even when it is not verbalized. He looks around and sees a rigid structure that he built with his own hands, but which now looks like a gilded prison. You can't just leave. You can't change everything all of a sudden. You can't be honest about what you really feel. It is caught in a web of commitments, moral obligations, social and family pressures that make any radical change practically impossible. You appear as the absolute opposite of all this. It represents the possibility of being authentic, of living without pretense, of experiencing real connection without the layers of obligations that stifle your marriage. When he's with you, he doesn't have to be the provider, the exemplary father, the responsible husband. It can simply exist without playing roles, without sustaining social masks. This feeling of freedom is addictive because it is something he does not experience in any other area of life. It's not necessarily about you doing something specific to create that feeling. Your very existence outside the structure of his life is enough. You don't charge, you don't demand, you don't depend on him for daily responsibilities. It is a space where he breathes, where he can be vulnerable without fear of judgment, where his weaknesses do not compromise his image as a successful and reliable man. This search for authenticity is legitimate and profoundly human. The problem is that he is trying to find outside what he should cultivate within himself. True freedom comes not from a secret relationship, but from having the courage to live with integrity, make conscious choices, and take on the consequences. As long as he seeks in you the feeling of being free and authentic, he will continue to be trapped precisely because he is delegating to another person something that can only come from within. 5. The narcissistic wound and the need for validation. Every human being carries emotional wounds from childhood and youth, moments when they did not feel loved enough, valued, recognized. These wounds profoundly shape how we seek validation in adulthood. For many men, there is a fundamental need to feel special, desired, admired in a genuine way. Marriage, as the years go by, fails to offer this kind of intense validation. His wife has known him for a long time. She has seen all his sides, including the less admirable ones. The initial passion that made him feel like a hero in her eyes was replaced by a realistic, often critical vision. She knows her flaws, her failures, her limitations. There's no longer that twinkle in her eye when he arrives. There's no longer that unconditional admiration that fueled her ego in the early years. When you look at it with fascination, with wonder, with genuine desire, you're touching directly on that old wound. You make him feel special again, important, desirable. Her gaze gives him back an image of himself that he had lost, that of the interesting, seductive man, capable of arousing passion. This is deeply repairing for his self-esteem, even if in a temporary and illusory way. This need for external validation is insatiable when it comes from an unhealed wound. He always comes back because he needs that dose of admiration, that look that makes him feel alive and valuable. It's not about you specifically, but about what you represent to the image he has of himself. You are the mirror that reflects back the version of him that he likes the most desires to be. The danger of this dynamic is that it creates an unhealthy emotional dependency. He is not relating to you as a real and complex person, but using you as a source of nourishment for a wounded ego. When you're not available or when you question the situation, he feels like he's losing not you, but rather this improved version of himself that only exists in the reflection of your gaze. The real healing would come from working on these wounds internally, developing a self-esteem that does not depend on the constant validation of others. But this is deep and painful psychological work. It's much easier to look for the temporary feeling of being special in yourself, even though you know that it solves absolutely nothing deep down. And that's why he can't walk away. You've turned the painkiller into a pain he doesn't really want to face. 6. the conflict between duty and unconscious desire. The human mind is rarely a harmonious place. Within each person, there is a constant battle between different forces. What we should do versus what we want to do, what is right versus what is pleasurable, what is expected versus what is authentic. For the married man who can't get away from you, this internal conflict reaches devastating proportions. On one side is the duty, the commitment made to his wife, the responsibility to the children if any, the social image built over the years, the moral values he believes he defends. All of this has enormous weight, represents years of emotional and practical investment, involves other people who depend on it. To abandon all this seems unthinkable, a betrayal not only of his wife, but of himself and the principles he has always claimed to follow. On the other side is a desire that emerges from deep layers of the unconscious, something that he did not plan and cannot control rationally. It is not simply superficial attraction, but a force that seems to come from a more primitive and true place of the psyche. It is the inner voice that tells him that life is passing by, that he deserves to be happy, that this connection with you is something rare and precious that should not be wasted. This conflict is not easy to resolve because both sides are legitimate. Duty exists for real and important reasons. Desire is also not something frivolous or disposable. It represents genuine emotional needs that have been neglected for a long time. He is paralyzed between these two poles, unable to choose, because any choice entails significant loss and inevitable pain. The way he deals with this conflict is by remaining in a state of suspension, maintaining both realities simultaneously. With you, he feeds desire and feels alive. At home, he fulfills his duty and maintains the structure. But this division is unsustainable in the long run and extremely destructive for all parties involved. He's living a lie on both sides, not being totally honest with either you or his wife. What he doesn't realize is that this paralysis is, in itself, a choice. By not choosing, he is choosing to maintain the status quo, to preserve his comfort zone, even if it is painful. True courage would be to make a conscious choice and fully assume its consequences. But as long as he manages to maintain this duality, he will continue to be stuck in this limbo, making all the people involved suffer, including himself. 7. The idealized fantasy versus the reality of marriage. Every secret relationship has a powerful psychological advantage over a marriage. It exists primarily in the realm of fantasy, shielded from the erosions of everyday reality. When a man meets you at sporadic, carefully chosen moments, he is experiencing only the most intense and pleasurable aspects of the connection. There are no bills to pay together, no conflicts over household chores, no arguments about in-laws, or difficult decisions about the future. Marriage, on the other hand, is the stark reality of human relationships. It's waking up in a bad mood. It's dealing with illnesses. It's facing financial problems together. It's seeing the other in the worst moments. Over time, the idealization of the beginning disappears completely, and what remains is the raw truth. Two imperfect people trying to build something together with all the friction and challenges that this entails. You remain idealized because he never sees you in the mundane context of real life. Each encounter is special, charged with emotional intensity and desire. You're always at your best, so is he. There is no routine to wear down passion. There is no familiarity to reveal the inevitable defects. It's a bubble where only the most romantic and exciting aspects of connection exist, shielded from the relentless test of everyday life. This idealization creates a completely unfair comparison. He compares the best moments with you to the worst moments of marriage. He compares the excitement of the forbidden to the predictable safety of home. Compare the carefully presented version you show to the complete, imperfect version the wife can't hide after years together. It is a competition where reality can never beat fantasy. What he doesn't understand is that if you live together in everyday reality, the same idealization would dissolve, defects would appear, conflicts would arise, routine would set in. You would stop being the inspiring muse and become just another real person, with needs, expectations, bad days, and imperfections. The current intensity exists precisely because it is protected by impossibility and secrecy. As long as he can keep you in the realm of fantasy, he will remain imprisoned, because it is comparing two incomparable realities, a time-tested relationship versus a protected idealization of reality. And in this unfair comparison, the fantasy will always seem more attractive, more true, more special. He can't walk away because he's in love not with you as a real person, but with the idealized version that can only exist in these impossible conditions. Wait, why he'll never choose and why it's not about you. After understanding all of these psychological mechanisms, we come to the hardest truth to accept. He will probably never make a definitive choice. And that has absolutely nothing to do with your worth, your importance, or how much you mean to him. It has to do with the fact that the current situation, as painful as it is, serves deep psychological purposes that he is not prepared to abandon. Choosing you would mean facing real and frightening consequences: divorce, social judgment, impact on children if any, loss of financial stability, facing one's own family and friends. But more than that, it would mean giving up something psychologically valuable: the ability to live simultaneously in two worlds. With you, he accesses repressed parts of himself, experiences intensity and passion. At home, it maintains security, structure, and respectability. This duality, while destructive, is comfortable in an unhealthy way. It allows him to avoid making really difficult choices, to avoid confronting the flaws of marriage honestly, to avoid taking full responsibility for his own happiness. It is easier to live in this limbo, feeding emotionally on both sides, than to have the courage to destroy a structure and rebuild life from scratch. You also serve a specific function in this arrangement. You are the outlet that makes the marriage bearable. Without you, he would have to face dissatisfaction, emptiness, lack of real connection at home. I would have to do something definitive about it. But as long as you can find in yourself what is lacking in marriage, you can go on and on without really solving anything. You have become, unintentionally, the part that keeps the system running. Understanding this is liberating because it takes away from you the impossible weight of thinking that you need to be better, more patient, more understanding so that he finally chooses. It's not about that. It's about him being trapped in a complex psychological dynamic that can only be resolved through deep inner work and the courage to make painful choices. As long as he is not willing to do so, nothing you do will change the outcome. The real question isn't why he can't get away from you. It's because you continue to be available to be the depository of his projections, shortcomings, and unresolved conflicts. Your power is not in making him choose, but in choosing yourself, whether you want to continue in this role or if you deserve something more true and whole.